Chapter 8 of Tractate Pesachim discusses some additional laws of the Paschal offering from the times in the temple. The first Mishnah says, to fulfill this obligation, you must be registered for an offering. In some cases, someone could make a registration for you. A woman's husband and father can register her. If they both did, she eats of her husband's offering. If she went to her father's house, as was the custom on the first holiday after her marriage, and both made the offering on her behalf, she can eat of whichever one she wants. An orphan whose guardians both offered a Paschal offering on her behalf, she can eat of whichever one she wants. A slave who is owned by two people cannot eat of either of their offerings. Someone who is half slave, half free, he cannot eat of his master's offering. The Gemara tries to suggest, based on this, validity to the concept of berera, retroactive determination in regards to picking an offering, but we say she's choosing an offering at the time of the actual slaughtering. There are some verses cited which compare the Jewish people to a married woman and speaks on the greatness of certain prophets. Specifically in regards to the prophet Hosea, there's lengthy interpretation on many of the verses discussed in that regard, and to several of the listed kings. There are also points on the exile of the Jewish people, why specifically to Babylonia. Some say that they were less cruel than the other nations, some say because their language is similar to Hebrew. A number of suggestions are offered. The remaining topics from earlier are further qualified. New Mishnah. If someone tells their slave to slaughter a Paschal offering for him, he can eat it whether it's a kid or a lamb. If both a kid and a lamb were offered, he can eat whichever was brought first. If the slave forgot which one he was told to offer, he should slaughter both a kid and a lamb, and specify that whichever one the master had said will be his and the other one will be mine. If the master also forgot which one he said, they just have to burn it, but they're exempt from having to bring a second one. The Gemara qualifies a few of these points, including a suggestion that as a normal person cannot be registered for two Paschal offerings at once. Some suggest the case is actually with a king and a queen, and proofs are brought. The remaining points are also qualified. This is discussed further. New Mishnah. If someone tells their sons, I'm going to bring a Paschal offering, and it's going to include the first one of you that makes it to Jerusalem, it goes to the first son to put his head and majority of his body into Jerusalem, and he gets all of his brother's portions too. The Gemara tries to suggest the existence of the principle of berera, again retroactive determination, from this case, but we see that here the father had already registered all of them. He was just trying to encourage his sons to run to do a mitzvah. We said a number of proofs, including a time where this actually occurred, where someone did this with his sons and daughters, and the sons were lazy, but the daughters ran ahead. New Mishnah. People can always be registered to a Paschal offering so long as there's at least an olive's volume of meat on it for each of them to eat. You can register to withdraw to or from an animal until it's slaughtered. Others say until the blood is thrown onto the altar. The Gemara says that this means that a group can register to an offering, withdraw, and then a different group can register to it. Some say the dispute at the end in regards to the timing applies to people trying to withdraw from this offering. We bring sources. New Mishnah. If one person of the group without permission from the others invites a guest to share his portion, they can share the portion. However, the inviter and his guest can be made to eat separate from the rest of the group. The Gemara discusses the allowance of if someone is just taking way too much food, if you can tell him to take his portion and eat separately. There are many proofs brought both ways. We found a source which says yes, you can, and this is discussed further. There are other points in regards to registering for a Paschal offering which are discussed, and a few others. New Mishnah. There are some additional points in regards to slaughtering and offering for someone with certain forms of impurity, and which days we do that on. The Gemara qualifies these points at length. New Mishnah. There are a few unique circumstances. A mourner on the day of his relative's passing, somebody clearing stones that fell onto a person potentially killing them, meaning this person is possibly impure, someone who was told that he'd be released from prison on the night of Passover, and a sick or elderly person who are capable of eating an olive-sized piece of meat. All should have the Paschal offering slaughtered for them if they are part of the group. We don't bring the offering for them individually, as there's a possibility that they won't be able to partake of the offering. If the offering was brought for them and they were later disqualified, they're still exempt from needing to re-bring the Paschal offering the second time, besides for the guy who was clearing the stones away, as he would have been impure at the time of the actual offering. The Gemara says, if the guy was in a Jewish prison and he was told he'd be released for Passover, then we could assume he will be, and he could have his own Paschal offering brought. Some say that it could even be in a non-Jewish prison, if it's in a location where it's permissible to eat the Paschal offering, as they could just take some of it to his cell and feed it to him. The points on concerns of impurity in regards to clearing rocks that fell on a person are discussed. New Mishnah. There's debate if we can bring a Paschal offering for an individual, or if it has to be for a group. Even if there's a group of 100, if they can't eat their olive-sized portion, we don't make the offering for them. We also don't make a group consisting of women, slaves, and minors. The Gemara cites some sources and discusses these points. Some say it's allowed to have a group of just women, or just slaves, or just minors. The concern is where they're mixed together, as it could lead to inappropriate activities. There are some further additional points on this. Some also say we don't make a group consisting of just converts, as they might be too meticulous and accidentally mess something up by adding details. Some say that the Paschal offering, the matzah, and the maror are only mandatory on the first night of Passover. Others say the Paschal offering is mandatory on all of the other nights too for just men. New Mishnah. A mourner on the day of his relative's passing cannot eat sacrificial foods by day. This is rabbinically extended to the night also. However, such a mourner should still immerse in the mikveh and eat the Paschal offering by night, but no other types of sacrifices. Someone who hears about the passing of a relative 30 days after their passing, or somebody who's reburying his parents in a new location to a permanent burial place, has a similar status, albeit rabbinically. They, however, can immerse and eat all types of sacrificial foods at night. A convert who converted on Passover Eve, Beis Shammai says he should immerse and eat his Paschal offering. Beis Hillel says he was just circumcised, so he's impure and he must wait. The Gemara qualifies further points by these cases. Also, in regards to laws of impurity, there's issue here with walking through an unmarked graveyard on the way to bring the Paschal offering. Some say you should blow the dust to make sure there are no bone fragments. Others say it's actually considered to be a pure area if lots of people have walked through there, as we assume the bones were removed or broken. This leniency only applies by the Paschal offering, which is much stricter in its requirements to be brought. And that's the end of chapter 8. Chapter 9 of Tractate Pesachim largely continues on the topic of the Paschal offering that was brought back in the times of the temple and offered on the 14th of the month of Nisan. However, there was a second opportunity to do this obligation based on an instance from the Torah a month later on the 14th of the following month, Iyar, called Pesach Sheni. First Mishnah says, if somebody was impure or on a faraway road on the 14th of Nisan and therefore was unable to bring the Paschal offering, he should bring the Paschal offering at his second chance a month later on the 14th of Iyar. This also applies if you're otherwise preoccupied outside of your control, but the Torah specifically mentioned being impure or being on a distant road, as those don't have the punishment of kares apply. The Gemara says a dispute. If somebody was on a faraway road and they slaughtered the offering and threw the blood on his behalf, is this valid or not? Some say yes, as the second opportunity is as the Torah is taking pity on him. So if he managed to somewhat participate in it by the first offering, then great. Others say no, he's prohibited the same way an impure person would be, and they cite proofs like their opinions. This is argued. It brings a source which discusses forms of impurity which cause you to have to wait until the second opportunity by Pesach Sheni, and a dispute if women are obligated or not in this second offering opportunity. And there's also discussion as to what the debate was for intentionally missing the Paschal offering. Rebbe says you're liable for kares for deliberately missing both, as he holds both are considered a fall holiday. Rabbi Nassan says you're exempt for missing the second, as it's only a substitute for the first, but he does not fully make up for it. Rabbi Hanania ben Akadia says you're only liable for kares for missing the first if you also deliberately miss the second, as he holds the second offering actually makes up for the first. They all cite verses to prove like their opinions. This is discussed. New Mishnah. How far do you need to be considered to be on a distant road? We say it's further than the city Moedim, that length approximately. Others say even if you're just outside the temple courtyard, as in the verse there's a unique dot put underneath the letter in the word which means to say a smaller amount. The Gemara says that the distance from Jerusalem to Moedin is 15 million, which is about a modern equivalent of a bit over 3,000 feet, and the calculation is given based on the assumption that you can walk 5 million from dawn to sunrise, which is calculated. The calculation is discussed further. It gets into some math in regards to astronomical calculations. It says Egypt is 400 by 400 parseos, which was an old form of measurement, and that is a 60th of Cush, which is a 60th of the world, which is a 60th of the size of the Garden of Eden, which is a 60th of Eden itself, which is a 60th of Gehenna. Some say that all of civilization is not wider than the diameter of a single star, based on the fact that you can walk in any direction and have the stars still be opposite you, which contradicts and disproves an opinion that the world is only 6,000 parseos. There are further astronomical calculations, and there's some further discussion. New Mishnah. By the first Paschal offering, you may not own chametz when it's offered, and you say the Hallel prayer as you eat it. By the second Paschal offering, you can have chametz, and you don't say Hallel as you eat it. Both have the Hallel prayer said as they're prepared. They're both eaten roasted with matzah and maror, and both their obligations override the Shabbos. The Gemara cites some similar quotes in regards to these laws. The sources are discussed, and the points are qualified a bit further. New Mishnah. There's a list of certain different forms of impurity that can affect people that they can't eat from the Paschal offering, but if they do, they're exempt from kares liability, and some say they're even exempt if they enter the temple in this state of impurity. The Gemara discusses some sources for this ruling. There are some related points. New Mishnah. There's discussion on how the offering made by the Torah in Egypt before the actual Exodus differs from the regular Paschal offering that was offered later. By Egypt, it was on the 10th of Nisan. Its blood was sprinkled with bundles of hyssop on the lintel and doorpost and was eaten in haste on one night. The other later Paschal offerings were observed all 7 days, which will be defined. The Gemara cites verses as sources and their derivation. It also says that when it said that it was observed all 7 days, that means that both that offering and the regular one could only be eaten on one night, but the one by Egypt had a chametz prohibition for the whole day, while the regular one has this prohibition extended for 7 days. New Mishnah. There's a discussion on a case. If an animal was designated as a Paschal offering, but was then lost, a new animal was designated, and then the original was found. If it was found before the slaughter of the replacement, the original is left to graze until it develops a blemish, is sold, and is then used to purchase shlamim offerings, and the same applies to its substitute. If it was found after the replacement offering was slaughtered, it's just offered as a shlamim offering, and the same applies to its substitute. The Gemara qualifies many of these points. This is discussed further, along with a few related topics. There are some additional points in regards to this offering. New Mishnah. If you designate a female offering as your Paschal offering, or a male in its second year, that's not allowed for a Paschal offering. It has to be a yearling male, so it should be left to graze until it develops a blemish, sold, and then the funds should go to the donation chest for the shlamim offerings in the temple. If someone designates an animal for a Paschal offering and he dies, his son should instead bring it as a shlamim offering. The Gemara says, based on this, that living animals can be permanently rejected from the altar. Rejection at the initial time of consecration is a valid rejection, and you can only properly reject an offering if it has monetary sanctity. There's also discussion as to when exactly the father in the case died. Some say it refers to the bringing of the Pesach Sheni offering. Some say the father died at noon. Some say he died after noon. And the opinion holds that living animals cannot be permanently rejected. There are a number of answers. New Mishnah. If the Paschal offering animal got mixed up with other offering animals, they all must be left to graze until they develop a blemish. The owner brings the value of the most expensive of them for both types, and the extra cost is forfeited. If it got mixed up with Bechar offerings, some say if the group is only Kohanim who can eat such an offering, they can eat of the offerings. The Gemara discusses the opinion of the last case and says that some disagree and say that we should wait until they develop a blemish and bring an expensive animal of equivalent to the best and switch the Paschal offering consecration to that one, and then they're all eaten in accordance with the laws of a blemished Bechor offering. New Mishnah. If a group lost their Paschal offering, so they told one of the members to go find it and slaughter it, which he did, but in the meanwhile they brought and slaughtered their own offering, if the guy they sent slaughtered his first, they all eat of his, and if that group slaughtered theirs first, then they all eat of that one, and the guy that they sent eats of his. If they don't know which was slaughtered first, or they were slaughtered at the exact same time, the sent guy eats of his by himself, and the group's is burnt, but they're exempt from bringing another one. If the guy they sent said that if he delayed, they should go and slaughter one also for him, and they both went and slaughtered offerings, if the group was first, they all eat of it. If his was first, they each eat of their own. If they don't know, or they were at the exact same time, they eat of theirs, and his is burnt, and he's exempt from bringing a second offering. If he told them they should offer for him if he delays, and they told him that if he finds it, he should slaughter it for them, everyone eats from whichever animal was slaughtered first, and if you're not sure which that is, both are burnt. If neither was slaughtered for the other group, then they can just use their own offering. If two different groups of Paschal offerings got mixed up, each group just takes one offering, and they say to each other that if we picked our offering, then great. If not, then we're swapping registration. This applies with lots of groups too. If two individual offerings got mixed up, they each pick one, register a random additional person to be a part of their offering, and they say that they're swapping registration if necessary. They need the extra guy, so they're not leaving the offering completely ownerless mid-transfer. The Gemara qualifies some of the points of these cases. There's additional discussion on these, and it just figures out exactly what's going on with each of these unique situations. And that's the end of chapter 9.